Let's check out today's conversation. Mike sits down with Chicago-based agent Monica Klempel. Monica unravels the effort she put forth in her career journey, starting with the thousands of hours she spent training as a figure skater.
I would spend 6-7 hours at the rink, developing my skills, wanting to be in the Olympics.
To having her hopes dashed by an injury.
It ended up being a broken foot in 3 different spots. It required just time off.
To redirecting her extra effort to have it all pay off.
A couple months later, I got the call from Luke saying, "You're gonna be in the Achievement Awards."
All of this coming up next on the Level Up Lifestyle.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Level Up Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sheets. We are coming to you live, as always, from Globe Life Studios in McKinney, Texas. And with us today, our very special guest is Monica Klempel. Hey Monica, how are you?
Hi Mike, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you have a great story. We got to speak last week, right? Just kind of getting ready, and lots of twists and turns, and some really neat things that had happened, and then some challenges and that you've overcome. And that's kind of the theme of this show, right? Is hearing other people's journeys and how they got to the place that they are today. And of course, very successful. For those of you that are listening that are maybe not familiar with the company or are getting started, Monica is an agent in Chicago.
Correct.
In the Mallory Redu agency. How long have you been with the company total now?
So this will be, I started in 2017. So this will be my 7th year.
Yeah.
I'll be 7 years.
7 years in. Goes by quick, huh?
Oh, it goes by so fast.
Right. So, the most recent accomplishment is you became, I think it's the 3rd person in company history to produce over $1 million in business in a calendar year. Quite the accomplishment.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, as you should be, right? And quite the journey to get there as well.
Yes.
So let's dig into that and hear your story. So tell us where it all started. Where are you from? Born and raised, and that whole stuff.
Yep. So I was born in River Forest, which is a suburb right outside of Chicago.
Okay.
Real small town. My parents came to the U.S. in 85, so that was the year that I was also born in. They decided to come to the States just to provide a better lifestyle for myself, my sister growing up.
Where were they from?
They're from Poland.
Okay.
Yeah, so came to the U.S. from Poland and just wanted to provide a better quality of life for the family and also further their education. They were both medical doctors. So my mom was a neurosurgeon coming to the States to do her residency. My dad was in dental school.
Okay.
So looking to finish that up.
So they're both at this point. In 1985, Poland is communist, I would guess, right? Is that kind of where it's Eastern European? So
at that point, they are a separate nation. So
it's not part of the USSR.
No,
but
not a part of Russia anymore.
Right.
But yep, they're an independent country at that point.
But still, just the opportunity of what being a doctor can do for you, and I'm sure the opportunity just to be a doctor is much greater in Chicago.
Yes, and then also just providing like better opportunities for the family and just better education. Obviously, you can make so much more money. The American dream,
right?
In the U.S. So my parents took that leap of faith and came over here and just had my sister, and they worked really hard to provide an example of hard work and work ethic, dedication.
Sure. And you see that a lot of times when people coming to this country, even still today, you think the American dream and the melting pot, that's, way back in the, 1900s, but it's still happening. People are coming here for that opportunity. And,
yes.
It sounds like your parents did a great job. And I don't think a lot of people realize that Chicago has a really large Polish population as well. I think outside of Warsaw, it's the highest Polish populated city.
So Chicago has the largest amount of Polish residents outside of the capital of Poland, which would be Warsaw.
Yeah, I learned that when I moved from Illinois to Colorado my last year of high school, And I told all my friends, I'm like, what are you going to do for this 3-day weekend? And they, what are you talking about? I was like, well, it's Pulaski Day. And they looked at me like I was crazy. But in Illinois, you have Pulaski Day off as well.
There's
right?
that 3-day weekend.
So, so as you came, your parents came over, and you were born in the U.S. then?
Yes.
And your sister as well?
My sister too.
Okay.
Yep. And then my parents decided to make the decision for us to have dual citizenship.
Okay.
So both my parents were still citizens of Poland and the U.S. And same with my sister and me.
Okay. And I'm sure we'll get into how that impacted your life a little bit here
Sure.
in a few minutes, but I'm sure there's some benefits to having that as well. So what was childhood like for you? I'm sure your parents are very busy.
Yes.
Both in the medical field, finishing their schooling and then going on. So what was that like for you growing up? What did you do? What was that experience?
So my parents worked a lot. We had a great aunt that raised my sister and me. We also had a nanny. So I didn't see much of my parents, but I knew obviously they worked really hard to provide the lifestyle and the different opportunities for my sister and me. I took up figure skating when I was pretty young.
How old were you when you started doing that?
About 6.
Okay.
So the nanny that took care of my sister and myself, we had another boy that played hockey at our local rink.
Okay.
So I would tag along and I would try out the figure skating, and I happened to really enjoy it. I became pretty competitive with it. I just developed a passion for it. I was scouted out by the Polish national coach for figure skating.
Wow.
She came to our rink, just my hometown rink, and asked my parents if it would be okay that I came and visited her at her rink, which was out in Addison, Illinois.
Okay.
And my parents agreed. They thought that it was a good opportunity. Obviously, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I had a natural talent for it. And I went along with the coach. I developed a very rigorous routine, just a lot of practices. I would be picked up from school by the skating school's bus. They would come get me from school. They would take me to Addison. I would spend 6-7 hours at the rink, just developing my skills, making sure that I'm qualified to go to the next level and ultimately wanting to be in the Olympics.
So
we had that potential.
So this picked up pretty quick. I mean, it just kind of started as, let me go tag along and watch hockey, to like, hey, I'd like to go skate. Like how fast did it, like when you put the skates on when you were 6 to when it started to progress from a hobby to something you were competitive in?
It didn't take very long. I just knew that at that point, too, I was watching a lot of the figure skating on the TV. The Olympics were going on. So, of course, we all remember the whole scandal with Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding. And just, all of the
There's a whole, it's like wrestling. There's a whole soap opera that goes along with figure skating.
So it drew me in. And obviously, I spent a lot of time at the rink, and I spent a lot of time just honing my skills and making sure that I was getting better. And I just felt a lot of like rewards and accomplishments. And I saw that I was working hard and seeing the results. So I just wanted to maintain that competitiveness. And it was developing skills that I still have to this day. So just the drive, the mentality, just the competitive edge. And it's something that continued throughout my childhood.
And it takes a lot to compete at that level. So how old were you when the Polish national coach, when you caught their eye and they approached your parents? How old were you when that happened?
So I was about 5th grade.
Okay.
5th grade. So throughout junior high and definitely high school, we were just making sure that I was qualified for the team and just continuing to improve and developing the skills necessary to be on the Olympic team.
Yeah.
And it was something that I was really inspired by, because there were other skaters that I worked with that are actually current Olympic champions that I looked up to, and that
were at this facility, at this rink. Wow. So when did it go from, because that 5th grade's kind of late, right? For you think to jump into that.
Yeah.
When did you start thinking, maybe I could be like the highest level competitive at this? Did it very soon after that? And I mean, what was that?
It was closer
process?
to about 8th grade when I started performing better at regionals and sectionals and just those different competitions that will lead you up to like the nationals and like the Olympic team and those qualifying events. So around 8th grade, I would say, is when I really worked with my coach more intensely. We went to a lot of different seminars. We would go to Poland every summer for a couple weeks. And obviously I got to visit my family there while I was there. So it became my world. Like that was just, I lived for figure skating. There were days when I would spend nights at the figure skating rink because we would have like a separate dorm almost, like where we could stay.
So this is where that dual citizenship came into play, because now you kind of have the opportunity. You could go on the American team, you could go on the Poland team. And so was that a decision that you made, or was it like Poland wants you and so we're going to go down that road, and American team seemed more competitive, or what was that like?
Well, because I was already devoted to the Polish team and I was already working with them and practicing with them, I mean, there was a choice where we could try out for the American team, but there's just so much more competition on the American side versus the Polish side. And Poland is always looking for their next like champion. And there's just not as many people that figure skate in Poland. So they're always looking for their next star.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to be.
Well, you think about it, you had a unique opportunity where somebody has an Olympic dream. You have one path, and that's through Team USA and where it takes you, and you're competing with everybody here. You kind of like, well, I can choose either path, right? And not saying that you're taking a shortcut or moving around, but it's, you here's a direction that you can take that puts you to where you want to go. And, did it mean anything to you saying, hey, this is where my parents are from?
Yeah,
to be able to represent that history and heritage as well?
Yeah, for sure. And I also know just the Polish team poured into me a lot, and they spent so much time with both myself and some of my other teammates. So I felt like I owed it to them to maintain that loyalty as well.
So what was school like then? Are you going to public school, or are you in a school specifically for potential Olympians, or what was that like?
Yeah, so I was in a private school, but they gave me a modified schedule where I would just lump all of my classes into just the morning, and I would cut school at like 1:30.
Okay.
I would skip gym, skip lunch, and skip all of that, in between period. So I would leave school early. I would be picked up by the driver that would take us to the facility, and then we would just spend 2 p.m. until 7:30 at night.
So
and
5-6 hours a day, Monday to Friday.
Yep.
And the weekends?
Sundays, sometimes we had off on Sundays.
But it's a lot of time.
It is.
Right? What did that teach you about, you have a really big dream, the amount of time it takes to achieve that?
I mean, it taught me all about sacrifice and just what you need to sacrifice to be the best. And I didn't mind it. Like, I loved doing what I was doing. That's why, to me, it didn't matter that I missed out on prom, that I missed out on dances, that I missed out on having dates. And, I
the traditional childhood, high school, growing up stuff.
Right. But to me, it meant a lot to achieve my dream and to keep improving and being the best figure skater that I could be, and eventually reach one of the biggest goals that I've ever had, which was the Olympics. Yeah. So to me, sacrifice didn't play a factor into what I needed to do.
I think sports provide such a great example to what it really takes to be successful that you can apply. And obviously you do apply that to your life today. But, so often you see somebody, oh, here they are on the Olympics. Wow, I'm sure they just, they were born with this natural talent, and they probably go practice every so often, but they don't realize that, this is a decade of 40 hours a week of practice for that one moment on TV to have that. So how much did you carry that with you into your future?
I took everything that I learned from figure skating and apply it to where I'm at now.
Yeah.
I know that throughout all of the years that I spent with figure skating and how much time that I devoted to it, I learned all about what it means to work hard and to be motivated, to be dedicated, to not give up if you fail at something, because there were many practices where I really messed up. Like I got kicked out of my rink a couple times because I was throwing tantrums because I was so mad at myself, and I was very hard on myself, like as a figure skater. So not that I'm not hard on myself now, but
I'm going to say, like, some people that would be surprising, but I know your personality. I mean, you're very fiercely competitive, so I can see why you would
but I mean, I don't regret it. I am the way I am for a reason.
Sure.
And I maintain that competitiveness, and I enjoy it. Like I really live for it. Like I've always had that mentality of, if you're not first, you're last. I mean, that stemmed from the figure skating. Because I was also very harshly just judged and, criticized, and just both for good and for bad, because people wanted to help me improve.
Right.
Just like they do, here with this career. It's always been like, I just have to make sure that I'm doing the best that I can and listening to people that are just trying to help me.
Right, right. Was there ever a moment where you thought, I don't know if this is going to work out, or I don't know if I can continue on the figure skating side as a kid growing up?
Yeah, I had a moment where I did end up qualifying for the Olympics. A couple months prior, I broke my foot in a couple spots.
Oh, wow.
I kept skating on it because I refused to just give up, very hard-headed, not wanting to give up because the Olympics were right around the corner.
But so you hit the qualifiers, you are in, you're going to skate for Poland. And what year was this for the Olympics?
This was 2002.
So in Salt Lake City. So you're going, that's dream is coming true.
Yep.
And then how did you hurt your foot?
I was in practice. So it was kind of like a prolonged injury where I hurt my foot during a jump, and then kept skating on it, kept re-aggravating it. And
were you being told, like, hey, slow down, you're going to hurt? And you're like, no, but I want to keep.
No, but I'm going to keep doing what I want to do.
Right.
And eventually it ended up being a broken foot in 3 different spots. Didn't need surgery or anything like that, but it required just time off, like just time to let it heal, time to take a step back. And I couldn't accept that because, again, this was my dream. I didn't want to miss out.
Yeah.
Like I had gotten there, like it's finally happening, and, there's nothing that's going to prevent me from going. And I was wheeled around in the airport, like with a boot on, just trying to make it to the Olympics. And finally, my coach, because still I'm a minor at that time, I think I was like 16 or 17. So my coach said, look, you're not going to do this.
You're not going to skate.
You're not going to skate.
Yeah. Wasn't it painful though, or you just didn't care?
It was painful, but at this point, like I've fallen on ice, like I've had blades like cut through my skin, like pain like didn't faze me.
It's part of
it. It's part of it, definitely. So I had a very high pain tolerance, and I just had to listen to her and sit back and not be able to skate. And that was
because you didn't get, it wasn't like, oh, you can think about that. She said no.
She said no.
It's not going to happen.
And, she was my mom at that point. So
yeah, right.
I had to listen, and there wasn't really anything that I could do about it. But yeah, that was a pretty difficult thing to have to face.
What do you think? Maybe in hindsight, you had healed it or tried to just take time off, that you might have been, or I mean, it was only 2 months out though, so I don't think. Was there any way to have done that differently?
No, because leading up to the Olympics, there's more rigorous training that you have to participate in order to be at that level and to make sure that you have everything perfected like before the games.
Yeah.
And at that point, like it was all or nothing. Like I couldn't just take a step back and be like, oh, well, I'm going to let my foot heal for 2 months and now
then
I'm
try to
go
get
to the
back
Olympics.
on. It doesn't work that way.
Unfortunately not.
So you did go physically as part of Team Poland and representing Poland there. I mean, in a way, it's you're representing your talent and the skills that got you to that point. But I'm sure it just such a different experience to be going there wearing,
not being able to do
not being able to compete. Yeah.
Do.
How did that make you feel? I mean, what's going through your mind at that moment?
In that moment, I did feel very defeated. I feel like I had failed. Even though I had made the team, I wasn't going there to do what I had accomplished. And it just felt like my world was crushed because I had spent my whole childhood, my whole teenage years just trying to make it to this level, and the moment is here and I can't participate.
Yeah.
And it was very defeating.
Yeah.
And I felt, bad for myself at that moment.
Do you look back now and think about it differently?
Yes, I do, because looking back on it, I feel like it prepared me for just a different path in life as well, because at that point in my career, I was getting ready to retire. Being a figure skater and being 18, that's usually like the point where a lot of figure skaters kind of go downhill. And most do end up leaving the sport when it's time to either go to school or they have a different path that they have to take. So looking back on it, that was another like fork in the road where I had to leave that career of figure skating behind and go to school.
Okay.
So I felt like
you knew that was coming. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that the figure skating was going to have to come to an end just because I needed to focus on school, focus on getting a job, focusing on my education. So it was just another way that I had to reset my mind and focus on something different that was going to help me in my future.
So where does your path take you at this point then?
So at this point, I'm going to medical school.
Okay.
I'm going to pre-med.
Okay.
I'm studying at Loyola University.
What was the goal? Sorry. So, your parents were both in medicine. So was there a specific type of practice you wanted to do, or just let's get in and see how this works?
At that point, I wasn't sure what I wanted to focus on. I knew I always loved kids.
Okay.
So maybe doing pediatrics, family medicine, that type of thing.
Okay.
But I was doing a double major, so I was doing pre-med and bioethics. So just very heavily like course loaded with a lot of school.
Sounds like I would fail most of those classes. I don't even know what that would be like. But
yeah, I mean, it was definitely a lot of work. But again, with the figure skating, it was something inside of me where I was always like a type A, personality where like I just did as much as I possibly could to excel. And I was also running D1 cross country at the time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So competing in both cross country, running, and doing pre-med work. So just the path that my family expected me to be on.
Yeah.
So everything kind of was moving in that direction.
Was that kind of okay, you can do this figure skating thing and we'll support it, but you got to go down this path. We brought you to this country. You have this opportunity. Mm-hmm. Like was that an expectation that was placed on you?
It was definitely an expectation. My parents always had a very high level of expectation for both myself and for my sister to be academically prepared for a great job, a great future, just prepare our families for that. So me going into medicine was something that I felt like I had always been prepared for and something that I was looking forward to.
Okay. So as that progressed, what happened? So you got your undergrad and then you start moving on. At some point you end up in Louisiana. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So after I graduated from Loyola, so I did all of my pre-med work, I went into an MD, PhD dual program at UIC. So that's University of Illinois at Chicago. So that's where I did my post-grad work. Okay. So again, it's like my whole 20s are filled with just school. And right. So at that point, when I was doing the MD, PhD degree, I was running clinics for like weight loss trials at UIC. Okay. So it was a little bit different. I worked with some professors that pioneered like alternate day fasting. It's actually part of my dissertation. So after I finished the MD, PhD degree, I went into residency. So the residency was supposed to be down at LSU. Okay. So I did the residency at Pennington Biomedical. And I was working with a doctor that invented IVF, or assisted reproductive technologies.
Okay.
So he's the man that pioneered that technology. I was being mentored by him. So that's actually the field that I was going to go into, was the IVF, the reproductive endocrinology, and women's health.
Okay.
And at that point, just doing the 3-year residency, I also had my daughter down in Louisiana, so that was my firstborn.
Let's say while this is going on, where you're at UIC, did you get married when you were at UIC? And then
we moved down for the residency with myself, my then husband, and I was pregnant with our first baby.
Okay. So you have your first child while you're going to school and doing residency. And, so I think at some point, right, doesn't your personal life and your professional career, they start to kind of intertwine and,
Yeah, so there were some challenges when we were down at LSU. I had my baby, my firstborn, Elle. Everything was going pretty well. Then I got pregnant for a second time. I had twins. I ended up losing the second twin.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
So that was really, really difficult. That just kind of shifted my focus from my profession to just my personal life, because it started to become very difficult with myself, my husband, and us trying to plan for a family, because it was sort of like I needed to then stay at home and take care of the family and take care of myself and not go to work. And then my husband and I had issues with trying to come to grips with the trauma of losing a child and having to move forward with our careers and our family life. So everything just became really overwhelming. And
the pressure, even just from the professional side too, going through a residency, there's probably a lot of hours that are involved in that, right? And then you've got a young child at home, and then you have the other challenges happening. So it's got to be a lot. What are you feeling at that moment? Like, are you feeling like I'm kind of getting out of control, or how do I balance? I mean, what's your mindset here?
Yeah, at that point, I just felt like the world was just caving in, and I didn't know how to balance both my work, my family, my marriage. Everything just seemed to be in complete chaos. And I really needed to focus on like what was going to make me the happiest and like what was going to provide for my family. And I felt that me staying in that marriage was just not going to work. So we just continued to butt heads with both me and my husband. And he ended up leaving, joining the Secret Service, and kind of separating from the family. So that forced me to leave my medical career behind and my residency and move back to Chicago. So we had to, again, redivert and come back home. And I stayed at home for a bit because I had my daughter at home, then I had my son, and someone just needed to make sure that they were taken care of without the additional piece of me having to work 80 hours a week.
Yeah. The Secret Services, where did that come into? Was he law enforcement prior? 'Cause it seems like that's kind of an interesting route. And then I'm sure he had to move across the country or.
Yes. So he is ex-Air Force.
Okay.
He's a vet. He went into, he was working in the VA at the time. So he was still working with veterans. And I think Secret Service was just a calling that he had and something that he felt that God wanted him to do. And if that's what he wanted to do and that made him happy, then, who am I to stop him?
Yeah.
But at that point, it wasn't about what he was going to do. It was about what I needed to do.
And what you needed to do for you and
for myself and for my 2 kids.
And so, I mean, this is almost like another situation with the broken foot in the Olympics because you are that close
to finishing that residency. It's 1 year out.
And getting, your dream, right? Going into the medical field, being a doctor. And so now you can't,
Yeah.
And again, these moments can define people in a positive or a negative way. So what are you thinking then? And how did you find that path out?
So at that point, my hands were pretty much tied because I was staying at home. I needed to take care of my kids. I needed to make sure that my goal was now more family oriented. And
your parents were supporting you at the time?
My parents were supporting me. Also, I was getting some support from my ex-husband. He was not living in Illinois at the time, so he was away for a while. Just getting as much support as I could from him, and just having to humble myself and, be willing to ask people for help, because at that point I, didn't have much of a choice but to stay home and make sure that things were going well for my kids. And if I wanted to go back to work, then I would have to go back to redo my residency, essentially.
So you have to start the whole thing over.
I would have had to start it all over again.
Wow.
So whenever I would try to reapply for other jobs, I was constantly asked, well, why didn't the residency get completed?
Because they're thinking, is there something wrong? Did you
get
in trouble?
Yeah. So I couldn't get a job in the field that I was trained in for, over 10 years.
Yeah. That had to be tough. So where does that path then take you from the medical field into so what are you doing, and then when you get connected into Liberty?
I stayed at home. So after we came back to Illinois, I stayed at home for about 2 years. And then I ended up moving in with my youngest daughter's, Gracie's, father.
Okay.
So I stayed with him for a bit, ended up getting pregnant with Gracie. And then at that point, that was kind of a turning point, because when I got pregnant with Gracie, I was told by him that if I don't get a job and pay for half of our bills, then I can't live in that house anymore. So I would essentially have nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
So
how do you feel when you hear that?
I felt very betrayed, because I stayed in that house. I took care of my kids, his kids, everything. I was a stay-at-home mom. I did great with just managing the home. And I thought that was what he wanted too, was to have a child together.
Yeah.
We were going to have a future, and it just didn't work out that way. So I was given that ultimatum, and I just started scrambling, trying to put my resume back out there. And the first company that reached out to me was Liberty National. And Robin, Mallory's recruiter, reached out to me, and she said, why don't you come in? Why don't you take a look at what this is all about? And that was the first thing that fell into my lap. And I just decided to run with it, because I was afraid that I was going to get kicked out of my house with my 2 kids and pregnant with a third.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not an easy situation to be in.
Well, and certainly not. But are you thinking, I want to stay in the medical field, or I don't want to do insurance sales? That seems like, you're 1 year away from being Dr. Klempel, and now I'm going to go be a life insurance agent. What was that mindset shift, I guess, or what are you thinking, and how do you get through that?
I was thinking, honestly, that I was going to go back into medicine, but I was getting a lot of rejection because I didn't finish that final year of the residency. So I really felt like this was my last resort. There's no way that I'm going to be able to go back into medicine. So I really did have to give up that dream and reassess what my other opportunities were.
But you had to do something too. I mean, you had that. Okay.
I had to start making money. I needed to develop a career. I needed to start contributing to our home. And Liberty National was the first company that I interviewed with, and that was the first job that I took.
So was it a decision of, well, I'm going to do it because I need to do it? Was there something that you heard that thought, maybe this is a really good opportunity for me? Or was it strictly just, I need to make money, and I'm going to do this to make money in the beginning?
Yes. Initially, when I came in to do the interview and I listened to the CLB, my thought process was, I need to start making money ASAP. But as soon as I heard the opportunity and I heard Mallory explain what the company was all about and the different trajectory of different levels and the different incomes that you can make and the different management levels, that sparked an interest in me because I knew that I wanted to be in leadership. I've always been in some form of leadership, whether it's in figure skating or it's in medicine or I'm leading a household. And I felt like that
alpha personality. You want to be in charge. You want to show the people the path to success, and you want to be the leader.
Yes. And then what really stuck out to me was when Mallory told me that there's no limit on your success. Literally, what you put into this career is what you're going to get out. And again, going back to just my own character, I knew that if I put in 100%, then I was going to get 100% out of this career. And that's what really just made me take that opportunity into my hands and do the best that I could with it.
Well, I mean, you certainly demonstrated your ability to have a work ethic in your life leading up to this point, right? You know, working your way into the Olympics in figure skating and, you know, working your way through school and, you know, getting through that residency with some personal challenges as well and still being able to achieve that. So how did the career start out for you in the beginning? What was that like? Was it just like out of a cannon success, or was there challenge, or what was the start?
Well, like most, it was rough at the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't think that I saw my first paycheck for a couple months.
Okay.
And
it takes a little bit, right? And, especially so in that market too, you're having to go into businesses, talk to business owners, which is totally different than anything you've ever done before, right?
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. It was much different. I was definitely brought out of my comfort zone. I struggled not only because I had problems with just the systems and just pregnancy brain, because I was also pregnant at the time. And it was a very large learning curve because I wasn't used to it. And the more I stuck with it, obviously it became a little bit easier. And at that point, I also had to take a step back. I had to take 2 months off to have Gracie, my baby. So
how soon from when you started did you have to take some time off because
it was about 5 months.
So that's hard too, because that's...
I mean, you're right in the crux of like trying to
right when it takes off.
Business.
Yeah. 5-6 months is okay. Now it's starting. You're getting a little bit of momentum. Yeah. You're not trying to figure it out as much, or it starts to make sense right about that time. So 2 months out, again, that's what are you doing in those 2 months to keep yourself engaged? Were you doing anything, or was just taking care of the child?
I was taking care of all 3 kids. And I did get a binder of leads. So I don't know like how far back this is dated, but we had like a binder of like Epic, like paper leads, like before Epic.
The market book, right?
Yeah. So I was given that book and I was just calling on all of these businesses throughout the day while like the baby's napped, and I would be making phone appointments.
Okay.
So when I came back to work, I would have a different set of managers that would come out, and we would go and close those cases. So I was ready like to come back because I had like a couple things lined up. I mean, it was still pretty difficult because I didn't feel like I was entirely like bought into the career still when I was out, because it was still very fresh for me, because 5 months in isn't a whole lot to like make a determination on like your future career with the company.
Right. And you said for the first 2 months you hadn't really gotten any results to make income. So it's really been doing it for about 3 months with success.
Yes.
And now it's just take 2 months off, right?
Right. So, I mean, that was, lofty goal to come back to immediate success. But I'm glad I did come back, because as soon as I came back, that was really what spearheaded a lot of my future closes, my production, my eventual promotion to being an SA. So
this was from the work that you did while you were at home, right?
While I was at home.
So how important in where you are today can you attribute to those 2 months where you were at home, physically idle because you're raising a family and you have to take that time from the birth of your child, but making the decision to, I'm not just going to sit here, I'm going to do something. How critical was that to making you who you are today?
Well, very critical because I knew that I needed to make something happen. I couldn't just sit at home and not do anything, knowing that when I come back to work, like there's got to be some kind of income, some kind of money coming in. Because at this point, I had left my ex-boyfriend at the time, Gracie's dad, so I'm living by myself.
Okay.
So it was crucial for me to come back and be able to do whatever I could to start closing those cases, making those paychecks, and providing now just for my kids and for my family.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like on the other side of that, things start taking off.
Yes.
Start experiencing success. What's this, what are your goals? What are you motivated by? Where are you going at this stage in your career?
Well, at that point, I was quickly promoted to being an SA. So there's that first leadership role with the company. And again, I really took that seriously because I wanted to be in management. I wanted others to be able to depend on me to show them what success looked like. And I remember with my agents and them just being able to reach out to me and me being able to lead them, teach them everything that I was taught. And I took that responsibility, and we were able to make some good things happen. And I was able to show them the results if you stuck to your goals and the vision, and see what can happen if you just listen to your mentors.
Yeah, yeah. So where are you going now in your career? So you had a couple short-term goals, long-term goals. What's that path?
So after SA, I became an AD, and I spent as much time, I think the most amount of time I spent as an agency director. So during that time, that was really the role that I flourished the most in because I achieved being on SEAL team. That was a huge goal of mine.
Yeah. And so everyone knows SEAL team, the agency director role that you're talking about, there's 270 roughly agency directors or regional agency directors in the company, so that all the listeners know. And kind of at that role, you have some supervisors that report to you. You've got new agents. You're running a team, kind of like a general manager almost in a way. And then the SEAL team is our group of the top of the top. SEAL team actually stands for Systems Equipping Advanced Leadership. So the idea behind SEAL team is let's take the people that are doing the best in kind of all three areas of our business and let's have 2 meetings a year, usually at fun destinations,
right.
Get together and share ideas. We'll bring in guest speakers. We'll have roundtable discussions. And so it's an honor privilege type thing. Like, man, you want to be on SEAL team because of the elite level of who's on there. And it's something to strive for. So obviously that drove you as well.
Yes.
And you made SEAL team. Your first SEAL team meeting was in, was that in Miami? Was the one in Miami?
And then it was COVID.
2 weeks before COVID, right? And then the whole world shut down like 2 weeks after that meeting. That was the last trip I went on for about 2 years.
Yeah, same here. I don't even think we had a second meeting.
We didn't.
Year.
It was virtual.
Oh, that's right.
Because it was supposed to be in Tahoe.
Oh.
That fall. Yeah, that fall. Yeah, we missed out on that. But so you make SEAL team. Things are going well. Things are good.
Yeah, I mean, I loved being in leadership and having that that team under me that I could develop and show them the path that has made me successful. So I placed a lot of pride and a lot of emphasis on that. And eventually, I did want to become an agency owner. So becoming an agency owner was another large goal of mine that I worked for since I started. So when I was in 2017, when I started with the company, Mallory sat down, we planned out what my map was going to look like, and just making sure that we checked off all the boxes to make sure I could achieve these goals. And so when I became agency owner, I was up in Milwaukee. Things were going okay. They weren't the best.
Yeah.
Eventually, things just didn't work out the way that I had hoped.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't something that I felt like I excelled in at the time. And again, we needed to find a different direction.
So I think, that it's something to be said that you achieved the agency owner level position. It's so much you have to go through to get there. I mean, we glossed over it, but there's long nights,
Yes,
challenges and adversity you have to overcome, developing other people and pouring in from a leadership perspective, all these things that it took to get to that point. You become an agency owner and it doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And for somebody to be at that point, this is almost like you have these moments like, this is an Olympic moment. This is a residency in Louisiana moment where
Mm-hmm.
you had your view, it's not going to work, and you stay.
Mm-hmm.
You don't leave the company. You're able to now tell that story is so powerful. So what's in your mind, and what are you feeling, and how does that lead you down to then staying and then achieving all that you've achieved after that moment?
Well, initially, I was pretty upset,
Understandably, yeah.
And I felt rejected.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, and everything was just kind of taken away. And now I had to settle, so to speak, to be an agent. And it took me about a week or so of just some really genuine conversations, both with myself, God, Mallory, my family, to really understand what this new challenge was going to be.
Yeah.
So my new challenge then was going to be an agent. So I had to shift that mentality to, if I'm going to be an agent, I'm going to be the best agent that this company has ever seen. And that was the mindset that I developed when I came back to Chicago from Wisconsin. And I took that, again, very seriously. Like, I felt like that was the role that I was supposed to be in at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Things happen for a reason. God put me in the agent role for a reason. And it was something that I took full on, and I wanted to develop myself to be the top agent in the company. And I definitely don't regret it. Like, God has a plan. And I remember that when we were in the Achievement Awards in February, I told Steve DeCharo that I really feel that there is a place for everybody in this company. And my place in the company is to be the top agent. And I take so much pride in that.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for it.
It's such a... just a eyes wide open view or take in your reality of what you went through to come away with that decision. Because again, a lot of people, they just get stuck on the
victim mentality.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, oh, well, this is just, they took this away. I don't know. It's awful. And that's it. And you don't. I mean, how important is embracing the adversity in that moment and maybe asking yourself, like, what is this trying to teach me, or what is this path? Because you've said, you're being put in different paths, and when these things are happening to you, I'm sure you're not happy about it.
Right.
It's taking you away from the path that you want to walk down, but how important is letting go, accepting, and moving on?
Well, it's very important, because you can't get stuck in that mentality of, well, this didn't work out for me, so now what am I going to do? And you just sit and you wallow in it.
Yeah.
So to me,
nothing good comes from that.
Right. And then if you sit in it too long, then you're not going to accomplish anything. And at that point, my kids are counting on me. Like, I'm still needing to provide for my family. I still need a job.
Yeah.
And bills are going to pay themselves. So at that point, I needed to just reconsider like what I placed value on, and that was my family, that's my career, and making sure that I'm providing the best life for my kids. And maybe that's not being an agency owner, maybe that's being an agent and working for myself, managing all of my personal business and making sure that I can provide the best service I can to my customers.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that responsibility, and I enjoy doing that more than I did any other roles that I had.
So 2022 was a pretty good year for you as an agent. 2023 is when you became the third person ever to write, if I'm not mistaken, there's only been 3 that have done that, to write over $1 million of net submit. You're the first female to have done it. And I know you said you're not, on gender barriers and things like that, but you're the first one to make those accomplishments. So it's a great year from a business perspective. What was 2023 like for you? And then we'll talk about some of the highlights you got after that.
So 2023 was probably one of the worst years that I've had, both personally and professionally.
Wow.
Just professionally, as an agent, again, I've been an agent then since 2021, 22, 23. So the book of business is pretty large. You know, there's a lot of things that I'm managing just on the, just administratively, obviously with enrollments and taking care of clients. And there were just a lot of things that started snowballing, and it was very hard to manage. And I'm not one to always ask for help all the time.
I would have never guessed that of you. I would have never figured that out.
I wanted to be the one in control. I wanted to be the one that fixed it, that troubleshooted everything. And I wanted to be the one that took care of everything. So it was a lot of responsibility, just very overwhelming. Personally, I had challenges both with my kids' fathers, like in court. I had to get some protection for myself and for my family from, someone that I had dated. It was just like one thing after another. It was just very difficult for me to stay in the business and not be mentally clouded by some of these things that were going on, both with work and at home.
So you got a lot of outside distractions and challenges. And so how does that equate to having the best year and like you've ever had, and breaking all these barriers, because that's almost counter. You'd think like, oh, last year was some challenges, so it wasn't.
Well, I think because I pour everything into my work, and I love my work, and I know that I had all of these other distractions, that were going on, but my career gives me a lot of fulfillment. And I think because I was dealing with so many other issues, I was trying to, just work and immerse myself in my career because it brought me that sense of purpose. And obviously my kids are still depending on me, and I need to make sure that they're taken care of. Yeah. So yeah, that was definitely a tough year. But
Did you ever question if this was maybe now, if this is still the right decision?
Yes. So that year, I remember towards the end of the year, I remember typing up emails to some of my old bosses at UIC saying, can I come back? Is there any spot open for me? Can I be an assistant? Can I be
trying to move back into the medical field?
Move back into it. So I had drafts to at least 3 or 4 different professors asking if I could come back. And I never once hit send.
Why?
Because if I would have hit send, I would have given up on myself. And I don't give up. I'm not a quitter. Same thing, just like when I had the opportunity to come down and be an agent, I could have quit at that point too. But then I would have never known where it would have gotten me. I would have never been able to write that $1 million. So at the end of the year, last year, 2023, I had those emails in there. I never hit send. At the end of the year, December 31st, I was sitting in a hotel with my kids at 4 a.m., just bawling my eyes out, thinking what a horrible year I had. And at that point, I also forgot to be grateful because, it could have always been worse. But a couple months later, I got the call from Luke saying, you're going to be in the Achievement Awards. You're the number 2 agent for 2023.
Did that help you kind of all of a sudden reshift your focus to be, wow, maybe there is a bit of gratefulness here? I think that's a great point you meant, that you had forgotten to be grateful for that. Was it a reminder?
It was, because sometimes, again, when you have those different challenges, you forget where you came from and you forget that there's other things to look forward to. So I think the fact that I didn't send those emails and that I didn't quit is the reason why I was given that opportunity to go to the Achievement Awards.
Yeah. And so in the Globe Life Achievement Awards, this is the award show. This is the biggest level that you can achieve. So for those that don't know, Globe Life, out of the 3 insurance distributions that function this way, Liberty National, Family Heritage, and American Income, it is the top 2 sales performers from each division. This is 15,000 agents, right? So you're in the top half of 1%, top 0.1% to be here. And then it's also the top 2 personal recruiters from each division. And then there's a legacy award as well for agency owners who have promoted other agency owners at the highest level. And it's down here in Dallas in February.
Yep.
It is the swankiest getup that you can do. It's, it's black tie at, the Ritz-Carlton downtown Dallas. It's high end all the way. So at that moment, you get the call. Okay. Was there a feeling walking into that room at the Globe Life Achievement Awards? All the Globe Life executives are there. The co-CEOs are there running the award show. Was it a moment to reflect on how far you came and that the victory that you've achieved? How did you feel?
I felt floored. Like it was just one of the most incredible experiences that I've ever had. Like you said, I mean, black tie, just all out. Everyone just goes all out to make you feel so special and recognized. And I was there by myself, and I took in the amount of sacrifice, the amount of work that I had put in that whole previous year, even though in my mind, I felt like it was just a complete disaster. But going into this award ceremony, I was humbled by how far I'd come.
Yeah.
In 2017, when I started with the company, I remember coming to leadership academies, seeing people's faces on the walls and thinking, I want that to be me one day. And finally, I felt like that was me that day.
Yeah.
And it was you. Very surreal.
And, I know you've said a few times where you felt like last year was a disaster, but to me, I don't think the only way last year would have been a disaster is if you would have let those obstacles stop you.
Yes.
And, the obstacles may have been disasters, but the result was tremendous success. And so you experienced that, and then fast forward here just, a few weeks ago and in the beginning of June, May, you're on stage of the Grand Ole Opry, you're walking across there. I mean, what's that experience like?
That was incredible. I've never imagined that I would be on the stage at the Grand Ole Opry. And that's, again, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I, again, had to take a moment to reflect on just the journey that I've had and how much different obstacles that I've had to overcome, and I didn't give up. And that was the end result, was being able to stand up on stage and give glory to God, my family, this company. I was definitely very, very overwhelmed by it, but I hope that there's more chances like that in the future to show people what I can do.
Well, I'm sure there are. I don't think you're slowing down anytime soon.
I definitely can't afford to.
Yeah. Well, it's just a great story on look what happens when you persevere. It's not what happens to you. It's what you do with it. Right. It's a lot of times your challenges aren't your challenge. It's your reaction to the challenge that creates the compounding problem, right? And just a great testament. I really appreciate you coming in and sharing that with everybody. What a story, what a journey through that. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. Well, we're not done yet though, because remember, there's one last thing. Everybody that looks forward to this, right? So you got all the old bobbleheads are looking at you from past episodes, and I have here. I'll present with you your official Level Up Lifestyle Monica Klempel bobblehead right here. Oh, there you are.
Wow, that's very fitting.
That is you as a bobblehead, right? Okay, so if you think that this, in a way, encompasses all those lessons that you've learned through the years of, the overcoming the adversity and embracing your position and moving forward and all those things, who you are today. If you were to go back in time at a crossroads moment in your life, it could be at that moment when I had three come to mind from, the Olympics in the wheelchair at the airport, that now your dreams aren't going to happen the way that you thought they would. The decision to give up the residency at LSU, the challenge from agency owner down to, and then an agent. If you could talk to yourself in those moments, knowing what you know now, after what you've accomplished, what would you tell yourself then?
I would tell myself that it's okay to find a different path, that sometimes it's okay to just start over, and starting over isn't a bad thing. That sometimes you do need a different direction in life in order to fulfill your purpose. And I really feel that when I came into this company, this is the place that I'm meant to be, and I'm fulfilling my role in life. I feel like I'm providing for my family. I feel like this is the lifestyle that I want, and God has blessed me tremendously. So that's probably what I would tell myself, is that it's okay to start over.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here, Monica.
Thanks, Mike, for the bobblehead.
Right. Absolutely. You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope this episode has inspired you on your path to success. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. See you soon on the Level Up Lifestyle Podcast.